Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television, where we keep you updated with all that is happening from the papers this morning. We have quite a number looking at where the Naira have rebounded to 1,004 to a dollar. And then we'll be looking at other stories as well in the paper concerning even the fire that got some shops in Lagos yesterday, and then the reason why the fire actually was out of hand where we're hearing that is because of lack of water, and then also the fact that the president is actually saying that ministers and others from April will have to suspend their traveling for the next 3 months. So you want to know more detail of that, please keep tight, sit there, and then we'll keep you updated with all of that. Follow us live on Facebook and on YouTube. I am Stella Elisha, and I'm doing the program with Rachel Tansi. Good morning.
Good morning, Stella.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
Great, thank you so much. All right, we will be starting with a Punch newspaper. Tinubu pushes 60 million naira annual pay for Supreme Court justices. More detail found on page 2 and 15. On the Punch newspaper, we have Delta bloodbath. Senate meets service chiefs as troops comb creek. More detail found on page 28. Federal government varsity workers meeting deadlock. Union continuous strike. You can find more detail of that on page 28. If you want to know why that meeting ended that way, please do well to read more detail. National Assembly passes student loan bill, processes jail for defaulters. More detail on page 29. And the big story, Naira rebounds to 1,004 to a dollar as speculators offload Forex. More detail on page 19, with a writer here saying Naira appreciates at the parallel and official market. Operators foresees 1,002 to dollar in weeks, and we hope to look forward to that. CBN tighten nose. All right, I take that story again. CBN tighten nose on currency speculators completes payment of $7 billion Forex backlogs. More detail can be found in the paper. And we have the picture story where we can see NEMA blames water scarcity as fire raised 4 Lagos buildings. You can see how a number of things have been destroyed as a result of that. More detail on page 5. Labour Party demand NLC president arrest over party secretarial invasion. We remember yesterday during the afternoon program we gave you the heads up concerning the fact that NLC yesterday shut down the office of the Labour Party, asking that Bure be suspended as the chairman of the Labour Party. And here we're seeing Labour Party is demanding that the president is arrested over that. So you can find more detail of that story on page 28. Lagos transporters accuse OP Mesa officer of extortion and harassment. More detail on page 5. Senate names committee room after late Olu Ibadan. You can find detail of that story also on page 14 of the Punch newspaper, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, National Assembly passes student loan bill. NLC pickets Labour Party headquarters demands Abure's resignation. CJN to receive 5.39 million naira. Supreme Court justices 4.21 million naira monthly. Other judges get review as National Assembly approves salary increment. You can find details on page 8. Soldiers killing, Senate service chiefs in closed door meeting. Kingpin behind Delta killing will soon be apprehended, CBS says. Details can be found on page 2. Abia Assembly repeals law giving pensions to ex-governors' deputies. Access Bank to acquire National Bank of Kenya. Importers of dairy products can now access FX. This is coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Owners of properties on Circular Road Corridor will be duly compensated, coming from the Oyo government. NPC members list challenges facing Nigeria's economy, saying most are outside remit of monetary policy. On Japan, nurses sue council, health minister orders over implementation of new guidelines. You can find details on page 25 of Nigerian Tribune, and then we have a picture story where we can see social advisor of resident coordinator of the United Nations in Nigeria together with the First Lady Remy and then other stakeholders. And so, like, before we move on to other papers, NLC and Labour Party is not a big story, but I can't just help but wonder, what business does NLC have with Labour Party? We haven't heard anything much yet about minimum wage talks. It started, it's silent, and March is fast spent. So before the 1st of April, we need to know what the new minimum wage is in this country. And you are here. I'm not about what the problem is or what the issue is. Just wondering, how is NLC meddling with Labour Party? That is a political party. If we were seeing NLC meddling with the TUC, with SERA, with CSOs, with other organizations or union that are related, perhaps one union is trying to do something that will be at the detriment of Nigerians, and then you wake up as a labor organization also challenging that other union and saying we will not accept this, or such kind of back and forth, but in the interest of the country, I will say fine. NLC knows what they're doing. But the whole asking of Abure's resignation and all of that, I don't know where we are heading in this country, but this is politics. It is politics either way. If NLC, a Labour Congress, is having issues with a political party, then how can we sit down and say the NLC has not been politicized? How can we sit down and say they have not been? Because who should their bone of contention be regarding anything happening is the presidency, is the government of Nigeria, is our lawmakers, is the state governors. Where are we at concerning your demands? Or are these new demands? Or what is this all about? And the slang is NLC keeps falling my hands. That's it. They just keep disappointing us on different level. And I feel that where are we concerning minimum wage? Because we are supposed to keep hearing, it's not supposed to be something that will just happen once. Why did the talk just happen one and it stopped there? It's supposed to be a process, ongoing, and towards conclusion by now. And it's silent, and the NLC is not talking about it. You've done your buzz saying 400,000, 500, 700, 1 million left, right, center. Where is the progress right now? Because I believe that whatever is going on, that should be your top priority at the moment. And you're supposed to be on the neck of the federal government, say, you know what, we are still waiting for the other things you have promised. Where are the CNG buses for the universities? It's yet to be released. What about the metric tons of grains? We are waiting for it, and all of I believe that that is your jurisdiction. That should be your priority as a National Labour Congress for Nigeria and all of that. So I'm just hoping that the NLC just stops disappointing us. Whatever it is, that is politics, and you're not a political group. You're not. You are for Nigerian. You are a civilian organization. You are supposed to be patriotic. You are supposed to be for the common man, and you're not a political party. You're not. So what is it that you have with with Labour Party that you have to be the one demanding for the resignation of their chairman and all of that? And truly, NLC just keeps disappointing Nigerians when they're supposed to be facing the real issue of the day.
Really, when I saw that story yesterday, Rachel, I think I shared the same concern with you. I was hoping to see NLC backing NASU and SANU toward them getting their salaries arrears and all of the salary that the government is owing them. And here we're seeing, even according to the paper, that meeting ended in deadlock. And Richard, I was not a prophet, but I told you this was how this whole thing was going to be. The fact that we're going to see several negotiation or talks, and then later we hear that the meeting ended up in deadlock and all of that. And you raised a very vital concern with the fact that why are they meddling with things that are political? I mean, I think ever since Labour went to Imo State, Rachel, something seemed to not be right with the chairman, because a number of people were asking, remember during his assault
Yes.
in Imo State and all of the things that happened there. Of course, Labour Party and NLC have something to share based on their flag and their logos and whatever they share.
Yeah.
But then, just like you rightly stated, there are other things you should focus on, even if you feel that the party is under you. This should not be a story that should make it to the paper. This should be a closed door meeting where you meet together and say, okay, what can we do? You know, there's this allegation concerning the chairman of the party. Why don't we feel he resigned while other investigations are being done silently, without it making so much of noise? And even if the papers want to have something to talk about, it will be based on there was a closed door meeting and not something of the fact that it decided to make a show by going over there to close that secretariat. And I think, just like you said, there are better approach. How about the minimum wage? We will not be surprised, Richard, until April. We now hear Labour saying that in the next 2 days we will be going on a strike because the government is here to talk about our minimum wage. And this is not what we want. We want to hear their voice now while it's still early before April. What is the government doing about that? So I'm hoping, and then even in relation to the story you read about the issue of the nurses, that I think we saw that story early this year, when the nurses were talking about the time frame that's given to them to practice before they can leave the country and all of that, and they took it to the street. I think it was it Abuja or Lagos,
yes, in Abuja,
where that actually happened. And now here we're seeing they're even trying to sue the council and the ministry. So there are better things I'm hoping to hear Labour putting, because regardless of whether it's a private anything that has to do with labor in the country, with people working, that is where I want to hear their voice. So we hope that they'll be able to go back, call themselves together and see what are we supposed to do. Just like you say, what is their jurisdiction? Do not poke nose in what is not actually your business. But let's see how this whole matter will turn out to be eventually. Well, I think that's all on that paper, right, Rachel?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper. CBN clears valid foreign exchange backlog. More detail found on page 19. And on salary structure for judicial officers, CNG to earn 5.4 million naira monthly. I hope that this money will be able to make them to focus and actually give rule better. NLC Labour Party lock in supremacy battle. More detail found on page 9. And on hardship, palliative not reaching Nigerians, Catholic Church tells the federal government. More detail found on page 28. And on the killing, strobe comb by Yelsa Delta Creek for militant leader. Demolition of buildings in Okwama continues, and then Senate Joint Committee holds meeting with service chiefs. Killing of soldiers, inhuman and devilish, coming from the IYC. Delta Assembly condemns killing, call for thorough investigation. And we have CDD asks the federal government to address deteriorating civil-military relations. Niger Delta host communities condemn killing, one culprit brought to justice. Remind warring communities of Udi's sad experience, which we spoke about that. And then we're having Urubo Youth urges the federal government to bring the killers to book. So we look forward to more of all of that on page 5. We have two picture story. One is Access Bank acquires National Bank of Kenya, and the second one is at the 2024 three-week conference, which you can take a closer look and see what the talks are in that conference. And that's all on the Vanguard newspaper.
On Blueprint newspaper, tension mounts over Edo PDP chair's whereabouts, abductors. You can find details on page 7. Parents of 20 million out-of-school children risk jail. This is coming from the Senate. Access Bank expands operation in Kenya, eyes 100% shareholding in Kenya. You can find details on page 31. The big story, federal government lists Mamu 14 others BDCs as terrorism financiers. Some individuals linked to Al-Qaeda Owo Catholic Church attack. NFIU orders funds, assets, other economic resources frozen, and this should be with immediate effect without any delay. You can find details inside the paper. 3.7 trillion naira budget padding CSOs demand list of constituency project, threaten protests in event of refusal. Army blames Kuje jailbreak on low fence, absence of CCTV. In Plateau, widow families of dead police officers receive 2.8 million naira. At the downside of the paper, allow MDAs to do their work, Tinubu pleads with National Assembly. Details can be found on page 8. We have a picture story showing the First Lady Remi Tinubu with other delegates from the United Nations and also President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Kogi State Governor. And that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
Richard, if the army is blaming the low fence for the prison break, what is the way forward? How on earth, Rachel, are we having a prison without CCTV?
Wonder.
I just don't know. There are certain things, Rachel, when you see, you can't just help but wonder. At a time like this, Rachel, we're having Barbie saloons that are just small, and yet they install a CCTV to see activities that are happening. We have malls and shops that install CCTV. Not talking about something as sensitive as something that's with the security of the nation. And we're seeing, we are blaming the fact that there was a low fence. There's more that we can do as a nation. And so I say, okay, is that for prison? How about Plateau State do a prison break? How about Imo State prison break? And many others say that there was prison break. What was the reason for the prison break? We saw, was it early this year or last year, where we saw that there was allegations that were coming that maybe they are working with the officers of the correctional center. That is how we had those prison breaks. So before we have speculations of why there are prison breaks, we should be working towards having, what can we do to make sure that, you know, when you go into the correctional center, it's for you to be corrected and then you come out being a better citizen to the country. So I really, when the army is blaming, I think there are more we can do as a nation, Rachel, than just having, pointing the finger and blaming why things are not working the way they should, where we actually have the resources, Rachel. If we keep saying that one of the things that is gulping money is security, we keep pumping so much of money, and yet we do not have results, then maybe we should change the direction where money should be going to. If we keep pumping the resources into a particular sector and then we do not have the expected results we're having, I expect more from our, you know, talking about security body tiny, not just the army blaming that, but I'm expecting more coming from that body when it has to do with security of the nation.
This excuse is very stupid and it just shouts incompetence. Kuje prison wasn't built yesterday. And we are not in the start of Nigeria. So perhaps we have a prison that we're not even sure, will there be criminals in it? We're just a new country. Let's just build a prison and all of that. And we've sat down all these years and you know that that fence is short. And you never did anything about it. It wasn't yesterday. It wasn't in the process of building and you put in prisoners and then before you completed it, a few weeks before completion, prisoners broke out. No, it has been there. It has been there for years. And you know the fence is short. And you did not build it as high as the standard is supposed to be. And you honestly think, I mean, Sele, what are we doing in this country? I just can't help. These are the kind of film. Are you even supposed to say something like that as a reason? It just says you have not been doing your work, you're incompetent, you are stupid, and you're not doing your job. This is what it says. Why is it not having a CCTV? Why is it not having it, Sele? These are the questions. Why? Why is it not having it? It's supposed to be a maximum security prison. Why is it not having it? And do you know the funny thing is that money for this must have been released and someone has been eating it and eating it and eating it because it is a need. I know there would be what is a prison would have said and say, okay, in our budget we need CCTV, it will be approved. We need to increase the height of our fence. And this money will be given because it's maximum security. So there's check for what should be and what shouldn't be. And you are here telling us that our corrupt system is the reason behind jailbreak. And you are confidently saying it without shame. I mean, this is Nigeria for you. And it's very embarrassing on a lot of levels. The things we say and we bring out of our mouth as people in position and authority is I mean, you can't just help but comprehend it. That we keep talking about how we are not working, how we are sleeping on our job, how nobody is caring to give their 100%, and we comfortably talk about it and give it as an excuse and as a reason to say, okay, yes, the fence, whose responsibility was it for that fence to be of standard? Whose responsibility for it to make sure that there was complete and maximum surveillance in the prison? Whose responsibility is it that you're sitting down there and you're giving it as an excuse or as a reason? It's a shame. It's very embarrassing, Sele. For me, it is. That's just what it is, and I'm just looking forward to where nobody will talk about corruption and make it an excuse and go to bed and sleep comfortably and wake up and tell yourself that you are the person in position while you've literally done nothing. Because if you have done what you are supposed to do, this will not be a problem in the first place.
You know, Rachel, the reason why I'm not happy about this excuse, because I'm trying to link it to this list of talking about the 15 we started talking about that yesterday, of terrorism financiers, and we see that some of them are actually linked to Al Qaeda, and then they have been trained over the years over there and all of that. And then we know that one of the leaders that was in Kuje prison was actually one of those wanted terrorists for a very long time. And then it wasn't just a daybreak. They did that. They planned it before they finally broke out of prison. They had explosives to actually be able to get away with it. We saw destruction that happened during the Kuje prison break. So I'm hoping, actually, just like we say, we need more from our leaders. If we keep pumping money to do something, let's make sure that the lives of Nigerians are secure. Till date, we're yet to have all of them back in jail. They are still out there. We have no idea. We saw where there was a ransom that was placed on their heads. Anybody that can find them, there were pictures on our papers and everywhere. If you see any of them, so amount will be given to you. So let's do better. I mean, even secondary schools, Rachel, remember, we all went through that. There was a time when our principal discovered that students are jumping the fence. There's a need to increase the fence.
That's for students.
So that's for students.
Not hardened criminals.
And not criminals. Why? Because we're trying to have law and order in school, not to even talk about the issue of prison. So we hope more will be done concerning that. Let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. The big story here says, federal government spends 6 trillion naira subsidy on unavailable electricity in 10 years. Now, we're starting from 2015, where we've seen how much was spent. About 225 billion naira has been spent, down to 2023, where we are having about 645 billion naira. And then lately, in 2024, from January to February, about 2 trillion naira have been spent, and yet there is no available electricity. Now, we're seeing about 5.4 trillion naira electricity subsidy between 2015 and 2024, and then also looking at some of the 3,000 megawatts we saw, where we have up and down to date this megawatts tomorrow and all of that. So I think we should take a closer look at that, so we can know how we can hold our leaders accountable for the reason why we spend so much of money for something we are not even enjoying as a country. Still on the Guardian newspaper, Senate passes student loan bill. You can find it on page 3. Naira eyes 1,003 to $1 at the parallel market as speculators offload the FX. Police arrest kidnappers of Chinese national in Kwara State. More detail on page 12. Army link Kuje prison break to absence of CCTV cameras and others. International organization to the federal government of Nigeria. Don't scare credible investors away. Settle with Sunrise Mambida Hydro. More detail can be found on page 5, and that can still be linked to the issue of electricity and power in the country. INEC to CSO, no election report, no accreditation. More detail found on page 6, and we hope that after they give their report, they will be actually accepted, and they're not saying that those were not credible reports. We remember what happened last year. And also looking at the issue of Okwama's killing, Orobo monarchs, the INC call for independent inquiry. More detail found on page 5. CBN says all valid FX backlog have been cleared. More detail found on page 2, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On leadership, the big story, Post-Petroleum Industry Act, operators exploiting gaps to underdeclare crude output. Tinubu's executive orders will enhance implementation. One future of nation's oil sector depends on the PIA. You can find details on page 4. Court refuses to stop Shaibu's impeachment. Again, National Assembly extends 2023 budget's lifespan. Details can be found on page 24. Trending, reps pass bill to give widows 5-month leave. And numbers, federal government releases list of terrorism financiers. Details of both stories can be found on page 2. Senate service chiefs meet on killing of 17 soldiers and officers. CBN clears valid FX transaction, eliminates $7 billion legacy backlog. Inferno raises 40 shops in Kano. NLC demands Abure's resignation as Labour Party chairman. Suit against election examinations on Saturdays dismissed. You can find details on page 8. We have picture story of that, of the fire in Kano and Lagos State. This happened yesterday, and that's all the news on leadership newspaper.
Richard, and this fire, I just can't help but wonder, we really need to go down to check what really are the causes of this fire. This is not the first time we're having fire in Lagos or in Abuja or in any part of the country. And I think that just yesterday, Kano and Lagos actually experienced, and we saw that for Lagos, NEMA was blaming scarcity of water. That's cause that we still have a lot to do. I mean, there are times where you call fire service and they tell you either there's no fuel in the car, or they're coming with a half tank or a tank that is leaking, Rachel. So in our system, the more you want to look into it in depth, you realize that a number of things are failing and breaking. Why can't we just have a working system? Why can't I just call a particular sector and say this is what is happening? Why can't we have police being there before the armed robbers leave? Why can't we just have fire service coming with a full tank? Why can't we just have anything that when I call an emergency number, it will be picked? Why can't we just have anything working? These are questions Nigerians are asking. And it's not just for all of this relevant authority to just give us an answer, but give us in-depth answer that makes sense eventually. And then for this fire, somehow when you look at it, either we hear it's either a spark from an electricity or something of that nature. So I'm just hoping, because anytime I talk about that, I remember when it happened in Plateau State, we had the fire, and we know what, till date, that main market has not come back to ship as a result of that, even though presently it's going through some renovations and all of that. But if only we had done what we were supposed to do, if only things were being put in order, we would not be having millions and billions being lost because of fire. So I'm looking forward to seeing things working, even for the traders. If there is a way you can make sure everything is being put in order, please do that, so we can avoid all of these losses. You see some of them crying, they took a loan, they have not paid, and all of that. So look forward to seeing a working system. I think all of what I'm saying is still boiled down to the fact that we need a system that is working, so we will not have reasons why particular things are happening presently.
So like just as you said, fire service, police, road safety, these are all emergency response unit. And just as you said, we've never had a situation where the police arrived before the armed robbers left. We've never had a situation where the fire service came and stopped the fire before it did more damage than it would have done. And we've never had a situation where the FRSC, that's the road safety, ever showed up that early and saved casualties. Sometimes before the car involved in an accident goes ablaze, there are split minutes that someone could have been rescued. Our emergency is no emergency. Nothing functions. And you can't just help but wonder, when will we ever get to that place that we stop things from happening, because our emergency response is always there. We will never stop talking about it because we are desperately hoping for a better Nigeria. We are in Nigeria, and you can't sit down and just say, let things become worse. You have to put yourself in the position where you challenge the system, you challenge the authority, you tell them you are not doing enough. We are tired of late CPs coming to say we'll investigate, of media interviews of either and the fire service, either the road safety, either the police. We are tired of all of that charade of nothing, that in the end is still the same thing over and over. We want to see you there when it's happening and stopping it from doing more damage than it should be. And until we get to that point, we are still where we are. We might have grown in years, but in maturity and a better system, we are even worse than when Nigeria started, if we were to tell ourselves the truth, looking at what was and what isn't. At the moment now, you know that we are depreciating. So until we get to certain points, we are where we are. We haven't grown. Matter of fact, we are depreciating, but we are hopeful. That is how we keep saying, no matter what you think the Japa is, that is just a little bit, 1% of Nigerians out there. 99% of all of us are still in Nigeria, and it's going to remain like that no matter how migration happens. It can never be 50 of the whole country leaving. It's just a few percentage because we are big. So let something be done, and we hope that Nigeria will be better tomorrow.
Of course, Rachel. Well, before we continue further with the paper review, we'd love to take a break. Quite a lot for you to contribute. So remember, you can drop that on Facebook and in YouTube as well. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back after the timeout.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Welcome back. It's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories where we've seen that the president have approved for 5.3 million naira to be the payment for our Chief Justice of Nigeria. And then also we are seeing the clash between the NLC and the Labour Party concerning the resignation of the chairman. And we have other stories that are actually on the front page of the paper, which we think you do well to get the paper and read more detail of the stories that are in the paper. I'm Stella Elisha Dasham. I still have Rachel Tanzi with me in the studio. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Stella.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Times. On the Daily Times newspaper, court refuses to stop impeachment move against Edo Deputy Governor Philip Shaibu. You can find more detail on page 6. Access Bank to acquire 100% holdings in the MPK from the KCB. You can find more of that on page 15. BVN NIN linkage, give it more time to run. Catholic Church urges the federal government. More detail on page 2. Senate extend 2023 Appropriation Act implementation to June 30th, 2024. More detail can be found. This is after a very heated debate over the Constitution implementation. We've seen that the Senate yesterday was talking about amending this 2023 Constitution. So they have extended it from the ending of this month to actually 30th of June. So you can read more detail on the front page and inside the paper. Salaries and allowance for our judicial office holders. CNG to collect 5.3 million naira monthly as reps have passed a new bill. Other Supreme Court justices each to get 4.2 million naira monthly. More detail can be found inside the paper. At last, federal government unveils terrorist financiers, direct institutions and individuals to freeze access funds of identified terrorists and backers. More detail on page 4. And I think they listened to Rachel yesterday during the Nigerian Now, where she spoke about freezing of their access and any other thing to stop them from that. Downside, we have CBN clears all FX backlog as external reserve rise to $34.11 billion, detailed on page 4. And here we're seeing the fire that got the market in Lagos and destroyed goods worth millions yesterday. And that's all on Daily Times newspaper.
On this day newspaper, the big story. 1 minute, Sarah. All right. Okay, on this day newspaper, the big story, CBN, we have settled all valid forex backlog, declares all encumbrances to market confidence. Nigeria's ability to meet its obligation now totally behind us. Naira makes significant gains, reaching $1,492 at parallel market. And AFEM closes at 1,496 to a dollar. Abdullahi reiterates Apex Bank's plan to recapitalize banks, says FX volatility moderated. You can find details on page 12. NNPC says processes for public ownership of its shares to begin soon, set to deploy gas in ongoing efforts to develop Nigeria. Economic hardship, Tinubu places temporary ban on foreign trips for federal government officials. Slain army officers, soldiers will be given befitting burial and national honors. Charges National Assembly Committee to be cautious in summoning heads of MDAs. Killers of military personnel must be seen treated as criminals, Diri declares. Senate warns against harassing and punishing innocent Nigerians. We have a picture story. Strategic meeting between NGX Group and the CBN, where we can see the Central Bank of Nigeria, Governor Cardoso, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
Well, I hope our soldiers are listening to this directive coming from the Senate concerning harassing and also punishing of innocent Nigerians. Because we remember the issue of the reprisal and then all of that, and whether we accept it or not, innocent people were being harassed and persecuted. So we hope that the right thing will be done, because in as much as we want the killers to be brought to book, let it not be at the detriment of innocent Nigerians losing their lives as well. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph newspaper. Nigeria earned $4.92 billion from tax, loyalties, fees from oil major. More detail in the paper. CBN liquidates validated $7 billion forex backlog. And then issues as APC woo the Southeast ahead of future polls. Detail from page 5 and 6. And on slave soldiers, military needs support to fisher corporates coming from D-Ray, the governor of Bayelsa. Why federal government link Kaduna-based publisher Mahmoud to terrorism financing? Because Nigerians have been asking that question. Also, average fuel price extend 157% in 1 year. This is a report coming from the MBS. You can find detail on page 8 and 26. Reps approve new salaries allowance for judicial officers, extend the 2023 supplementary budget execution to June 2024. Proceed on Easter and Salah break till April 16. More detail on page 3 and 5. INEC adopts no observation report, no accreditation for polling monitoring. Detail on page 2. NSCDC boss arm factory in Abuja arrest 7 kudos to them. We hope to see more coming from them. And on the JAPA issue, nurses sue federal government over new verification guidelines. NLC LP tussle over party control. More detail found on page 4. 20 million out-of-school children tools for terrorism, violent crime. This is coming from the DSP, and the question will be, whose fault is it that the students are out of school, where we're seeing that it's a threat that maybe the parents should be put in jail or they risk jail term. But whose fault is it when we are having issues of a number of terrorism, bombing, and then the reason why some students are out of school? So More research should be done into that as Senate moved to tackle the challenge and then also extend the 2023 capital project execution to June. More detail can be found on page 2 and 26. Downside, we have a study. Scientists find way to eliminate AIDS causing virus. You want to know what are the ways? You can find that study on page 7. We have a picture story at the front page of the paper. Do well to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Matrix newspaper, Cardoso promises fulfilled as CBN clears valid FX transactions backlog. He's an animal with figure on most competitive footballer. You can find details on page 16. Senate declares support for military after service chiefs briefing. Lawan appeals for information from community to aid arrest of perpetrators. This is on the Okama killings. The big story on the paper, Labour Party NLC crisis worsens. Ajero's claim that NLC owns Labour Party not backed by Electoral Act or the Constitution. Accuses NLC of parading militant arm, threatens lawsuit over libelous statement against Abure, focus on negotiating better working condition, welfare for average Nigerian worker. Abure bombs Ajero. NLC calls for caretaker transition committee to organize legitimate, all-inclusive national convention. Details can be found on page 2. Tinubu increases salary of CJN, Supreme Court judges and others. Tinubu to confer national honors on slain soldiers, promises befitting burial. Court refuses to stop impeachment move against Shaibu. And then on entertainment, Idris Elba partners Mo Abudu on Dust to Dreams. Details can be found on page 15. National Assembly passes student loan bill. Federal government unveils full list names of BDCs linked with terrorism financing. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, student loan bill scales third reading at Senate. FX backlog, CBN clears all outstanding backlog. Access Holding to acquire National Bank of Kenya Limited. Detail found on page 8. NLC shut down Labour Party National Secretariat as part of so deepers. Union accuses Abure of organizing secret convention. Algeria using union for 2027 political goal. This is an accusation coming from Abure. You can find detail of that on page 3. Also, we have why we want Lagos Assembly to amend Lasimre law coming from the GM Alegushi. You can find more of that on page 21. 7-day warning strike. Sanu Nasu negotiate with federal government hit deadlock. Federal government to finalize the FID on Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline by December. Building collapses as fire gulfed 3 buildings in Lagos Market. Nurses sue council. Minister over certificate verification policy. Detail found on page 3. And that's all on Nigerian News Direct.
On Daily Independent newspaper, the big story. Labour faults NLC picketing party's secretariat, says it's unlawful. Berates Joe Ajero, vows to drag union to court. Utomi urges ceasefire stakeholders consultations. One proposed March convention postponed. Go into farming to better our situation, Oluremi Tinubu tells Nigerians. Is she starting to take the part of President Tinubu? I mean, of President Muhammadu Buhari, rather, because this was one of the most famous statements always coming from President Buhari at that time, going to farming, and when farmers did, they were killed on the farm. So talk about security, Remy, and when the places are safe, people will gladly farm eventually. You can start with the details on the front page. Tinubu is decisive leader. Posterity won't forget him, says Shetima. NNPC Limited pledges to use gas to trigger Nigeria's industrialization and economic development. Why Kuje prison break was successful. Senate passes student loan NYSC trust fund bills. Fire destroys building goods at Lagos Market and 37 shops in Kano State. Concerning $7 billion, CBN eliminates FX legacy backlog, clears valid transactions. Details can be found on page 6. National Assembly pushes 2023 Appropriation Act implementation to June 30th. At the downside of the paper, SEC rejects PZ Caution's minority shareholders buyout and delisting plan. More details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On Sweet Crew Report newspaper, Nigerians metered electricity customers hit 5.8 million. Also, we have African Development Bank calls for end to loan tied to Africa's natural resources. You can find more of that, and that happened in Lagos. You can start reading on the front page and continue on page 3. And LNG Train 7 project reaches 60% completion. You can see the picture showing some of the 7 projects that are going on presently. SERAP asks NIMET to account for over $69 million received for power supply to Benin. More detail of that story can be found inside the paper, and that's all on Sweet Crook Report.
On Punch Sport Extra, the big story, no rival. Amusan defies false start to claim third African Games hurdles gold, then leads women to 4x400-meter glory. Forest may be forced to sell Owuni. Osai Samuel signs new Fena deal. City face EPL expulsion over FFP bridges. We have Garnacho dreams Madrid transfer. And then Chelsea rivals I Palma. Details can be found on page 4. Ghana-Nigeria friendly Eagles value drops from 465 million euros to 345 million euros. Ghana clash more than friendly. This is a statement coming from Finidi, the present coach for the Nigerian Super Eagle team. At the downside of the paper, again, Kotai undergoes knee surgery. That was the one-time goalkeeper at Chelsea. I'm not a cheat. Halep fires back at Wozniacka. You can find details on page 8. And that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
Well, that's also how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this.
You're welcome, Sally.
Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our supporters. Thank you to the crew members. Until we come your way tomorrow, do have a great day ahead.